Hello, this is your host, Austin Hopkins, and welcome to the Introvert Leader Podcast. Welcome to episode 8, Negotiating a Job Offer. Super excited to have you guys here for another episode. Got a lot of fun, interesting things to talk about as it relates to the job offer negotiation process. Something that maybe we'll all go through in our lifetime. Something that can be a little scary, but if you have the right tips, the right strategies, you're going to be fine. So to jump right into it, I always like to give an update first. Things for me, music-wise, I've been listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers. Not a new band by any means, right? Everybody knows them, everybody loves them, but I didn't really grow up with them and really didn't discover them until maybe the last, I want to say 3 or 4 years. Like I knew about them, but didn't really give their music the time of day. I should have earlier. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. But they're amazing. I absolutely love their music. It's really good music to drum to. So I've been playing my drums a lot to that. And speaking of drums, I watched this really cool documentary on Netflix called Count Me In. It's about drumming. It's about famous drummers, the culture, all of that jazz. So if you're ever kind of interested in why people choose to play drums and what kind of people they are, you might enjoy watching that documentary. And if you're a drummer, you're going to absolutely love it. Moving on, YouTube content. I'm a big YouTube guy. I mentioned that before. And the new channel that I have found that is just catching my attention and I can't get enough of is called The Local Project. So it is a publication based out of New Zealand or Australia, one of those two, who focuses on amazing homes and their architecture. So I'm kind of a sucker for really, really clean, minimalist architecture. So concrete, slate, stone, that kind of stuff just gets me excited. And I really, really, really love to know why people design the homes they do and how they do it. And this channel has been amazing. So highly recommend this channel if you watch some good videos about architecture that's also really visually stunning. There's some of the most beautiful homes along the coast in Australia and New Zealand. It's just really fun to look at. And then to wrap things up on the personal update, new stuff for me is I had mentioned a few episodes back that I was having these feelings of wanting to start a business, right? And really offer my services when it relates to career and leadership coaching to more folks, right? People are always reaching out and asking for support and asking for advice. I figured, why not bring this to more folks? So decided officially to launch the coaching business. So STS Coaching is on its way, folks. And I'm starting it with my good friend, Kyle, who has been in the finance industry for years, bought and sold businesses, and really just has an amazing perspective and really a unique experience. So really excited to be launching STS Coaching with him. More to come on that, but we've been working on that. Really, really excited to announce once it's live and get more folks to understand what makes them unique and how to tap into that to find success. So moving on, let's jump right into it, guys. So why do we want to discuss job offer negotiation? So for me, I've went through this myself, and likely most people who are listening to the podcast have gone through the process of finding and negotiating for a new job at some point. And honestly, I just want to help folks navigate one of the most crucial parts of the job hunt process, right? You've made it to the very end. This is where you seal the deal. So, if you kind of look around what's happening in our world, right? If you look in the news, it seems like every day a new tech company is laying a big group of people off. So, if I can do my part to help these kind of folks land on their feet, why not, right? And I also have a bunch of friends who are in the process of looking for, interviewing, and negotiating for new jobs. And I want to be able to give them, the confidence to approach these situations and really come out the other side achieving what they want. So that's the why. So what we're going to do today, I want to talk about how we prepare for a job offer negotiation. I want to talk about what your mindset looks like, what the actual process will be like with the recruiter or the hiring manager, and really how to approach those key pivotal moments throughout the process. So that's what we'll talk about today. So to kick things off, I always like to start with the preparation, right? It always starts even before you have that first conversation. You got to be prepared, right? You got to know what's going on. You got to have your ducks in a row. You got to make sure that you have the information you need to show up to those conversations effectively. So I think a couple things come to mind when I think about preparation. Number one, you've got to know your worth and your value. And we'll take it a step further to define what I mean by that. But number one, you've got to know what your value is, right? If you don't know what your value is to this potential employer, what you can do for them, where you can help them solve problems, then the negotiation process is going to be much tougher because you have nothing to point to. So for me, what I always like to do is take people through an exercise, and it really helps them kind of start to find out what makes them unique. So here are the things that you can start to do to kind of think about your value, right? Is what have you done in your career? What big projects have you done? What kind of companies have you worked for? What have you learned? What have you mastered? What have you taught other people? Take a list, right? Piece of paper, write down all of those things that you think relate to your experience, that are impressive, that are valuable, right? And it may be a challenging exercise. You might just think, well, I've just had a pretty mediocre career, or, I've never done anything huge. But I guarantee you, if you sit with the pen and paper long enough and you really, really, really dig deep, get creative, think about all of the different things that you've done, I bet you probably have a pretty decent list of some things that start to look pretty good and pretty valuable. So do that. I want you to write down all the things about your experience that make you unique, that have value. Now, I want you to start thinking about your personality and who you are as a person, right? Start to think about, in business and personal, what are some of the strengths you have? What are some of the positive tendencies you have? What are you better at than everybody else? This is a question I always like to ask folks. What are you better at than anyone else? And it kind of stumps people when I ask them that question, right? Because no one really gets asked that question, but I think it's a good one because it gets you to think, well, what do I have to offer that others don't? Because again, once you start to find out what makes you unique and you lean into that, that's where you start seeing more success, right? It's finding out what makes you unique and leaning into that more than you ever thought you could. That's where success comes from. So start to think about the things that make you unique. Start to think about your experience. And what is that value that you can actually provide to that employer? What are you going to do for them? Again, what are the problems you can solve? What are the things that you can help them achieve, etc.? So you've thought about your value, your experience, your uniqueness, right? And that's going to take you some time, but I really think that exercise is important, of taking, the time to list those out and refine them, right? Make them, as concise and succinct as you can. Think about just the most important things. And then next step would be, let's get into the actual salary of what you're worth, right? And this is where you're going to use a couple of different tools. Number one, start to talk with your colleagues and friends who maybe have done the job you're applying for, or know someone who has done the job that you're applying for, and they can tell you maybe what the salary is. Right? I think for years, there's been a stigma about talking about your salary, and I'm guilty of that. I haven't always been the most comfortable talking about numbers and about what my salary is, right? I don't want people to compare or feel a certain type of way. So I always kind of kept those things private. But the more and more I realize that there's power in talking about those things, and it empowers folks to make good decisions, I'm like, why not? Let's talk about it. So today I'll even get out of my comfort zone a little bit more and talk about some story that involves some real numbers. So moving on, salary, right? Again, we want to talk to colleagues. We want to talk to friends. We want to find out what the job like this pays for. Number two, I want you to start using tools like Glassdoor, Payscale, Indeed, or LinkedIn. And what you're going to do for these tools is you're going to use them to find out what a role like this or this exact role pays. So on Glassdoor, you can search by employer name, by the job title. You can put in things like the location, whatever parameters you want to put in there. You can get a pretty good, realistic view of what a salary should be for a role like that. Again, Payscale, same thing. Indeed and LinkedIn, what you can do is click on specific job postings and see what they're actually paying for that role, right? So now I know specifically in New York, there was a law that was recently passed that is around salary transparency. And as far as I understand the law, it really is going to require companies that are posting positions in New York to post and include the salary range for a specific role. So really good information for you to know. And those different sites are going to be able to give you the information to find out what you believe you would be worth for the job you're applying for. So you know your value, you know your worth as far as the salary. I want to turn your attention to something else that's really important, and it's knowing the company, right? So of course, I'm assuming if you've gone through the process of interviewing, you've researched about the company. So you know what its goals are, its struggles, its big problems it's trying to solve, etc. So store that information away, because you're going to use that when it comes to the actual negotiation. You need to understand what's important to the company so that you can then tie in your value to that. And that is, you're going to be your sales pitch for them to give you a higher salary. That's all it is. So After you know about the company, you know your worth, you know your value, it's important that you know your goal. So what is your goal going into this job offer negotiation? Is it just to get a high salary? Is it to get a big bonus? Are you looking to have a specific schedule, a relocation package? Are you looking for stock, vacation days? What is it that you're looking for? Know your goal and get specific for each of those things, right? Because each of those things are going to come into play later when it comes to the actual negotiation. So think about what your goal is for your salary, right? What's the ideal number? Do you have a bottom number that you would accept, right? Is there a number that you wouldn't accept any less than to move forward? Are you expecting a bonus, or is it going to be okay if you don't get a bonus to meet your goal, right? Your financial goal, whatever that is, or is that important? Do you want to be fully remote, hybrid? Do you want the ability to choose, right? Relocation, are you relocating? What will the cost be? Do you need them to cover your move fully or just partially? Stock, right? Does this position offer stock, RSUs, whatever it is? Do you see yourself staying with the company long enough for it to even matter? Right? I know so many folks that have had that almost, what is the term, golden handcuffs when it comes to RSUs, because they just keep throwing them at them and they want to keep staying until they vest. And I get it, but you got to think through those things, right? And how many vacation days? Is vacation super important to you? Or are you one of those people that don't really use it much? So know your goals going into it. I want to transition to the next thing that's really, really important, and it's mindset. This one is absolutely key. If your mindset is not right going into a job offer negotiation, you're screwed. And that's just the truth. And the reason why is it's going to be uncomfortable. At least it is for me, right? Because it's going to be asking for something when someone maybe doesn't want to do it. And it's going to be negotiating, which for me as an introvert, a people pleaser, I don't really like that, right? So you got to have the right mindset. And there's a couple of different things that I think you need to have on your mind as you go into this process. Number one is to not be desperate. You're not desperate for this job. You're not. There's always another job out there if this one doesn't work out. Trust me, there are hundreds of thousands of jobs that are available. They may seem like they're out of reach or you may not know about them, but trust me, the job you're applying for is not the only job that's available that will pay you what you want and allow you to do something you enjoy. So desperation is a surefire way to you lose out on a job, just like in dating, right? Desperation shows a lack of confidence and people just don't like it. People don't respond to it. So don't be desperate. You're not desperate for this job. You want it to work out. You're excited. You're optimistic, but you're not desperate. Next one is have a same team mindset. This is something that's always interesting to me. I've seen folks go through this process of negotiating a job offer and they're interacting with the recruiter or the hiring manager. When it comes to the actual negotiation part, it's almost like they're against them, right? And it's kind of, I'm competing against you to see what deal we can get. So don't be a dick, right? Be polite and try to be likable, right? People will go to bat for you if you're likable. So, be courteous, say thank you, you're welcome, follow up when you should, and just remember at the end of the day, you guys are all on the same team. You have the same goal. They want to fill the role and you want to get a job. So just make sure you have that same team mindset as you go into it. The next one, confidence. This one is sometimes tough for people, right? Because you can't just wake up one day and say, I'm a confident person, right? That's just not how that works. If so, I think every single person on earth would do that. But here's my trick about confidence. I've talked about it before. I'll continue to talk about it. And confidence is really, to me, it's taking action and it's assuming the best. So the things I always like to think about when it comes to confidence is it's going to work out. Whatever ends up happening through the job offer negotiation, it's going to work out. Maybe that means you don't get the job. Maybe it means you get the job for less money than you want. Maybe you get the job for more money than you thought. Doesn't matter. Something is going to happen. And then from there, it's just up to you to pivot and figure out how you're going to move forward, right? Number two, you are valuable. This one is important. Every single person I've ever met in my life is valuable. They have a thing that they can add to the world that will improve the world in some way. So I need you to remember that. You're valuable. You may be insecure. You may think you're not ready for the role. You may think you're not a good fit for the role. Doesn't matter. All of those things are in your head. You are valuable, but it's important that you know that. If you don't believe that you're valuable and you don't believe that there's something you can add to that company, why in the heck would they believe it? Right? So again, it starts with you. And then the last one I always kind of tell myself is, this is the exact role for me. I was made for this role. This role was created for the express purpose of me getting hired so that I could do it. And you got to think like that. You got to think that there is no other candidate in the entire process that is a better fit for this role. If you believe that in your heart, right, it's going to come across to the recruiter, to the hiring manager very, very clearly. So that's the few different things I always like to do when it comes to confidence. The next one is I need you to remember this. Everything is on the table. And I mean, you can negotiate everything. So I always grew up thinking you could just negotiate the salary. Well, my salary is X and I want a little bit more and we'll go negotiate for that. And that's great. But after the research I've done and everything I've learned from my own experiences and talking with friends and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, I figured out that you can negotiate anything. So salary, vacation, remote work, stock, bonuses, learning budget, relocation budget, clothing budget. I don't care what it is. Get creative. You can negotiate everything. And we'll talk more about how to prioritize those things in a moment. Okay, so we're in the right mindset. We're ready to go. Now it's actual time to get to the negotiation, right? So you've gone through the interview process. The recruiter reaches out. They're ready to make you an offer. They set a meeting for Tuesday. You show up to the call on Tuesday. What happens? So here's what I would do. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. So they're going to get on their phone. The recruiter's going to be excited to offer you the role. And what I want you to do is listen to their full offer. Do not interrupt. Let them go through the entire package, right? Because remember, pay is only one part of your package, your compensation package. So don't just think of your salary. It's everything all included that makes up a compensation package. So that's what you're really negotiating, not just a salary. That's important. Don't get me wrong. It's just one part of it. So get to the call, listen, right? After they do the whole package and go over it step by step, start to ask questions, right? Maybe you need clarity around what the remote workability looks like. Maybe you want to know when the bonuses get paid out. How does the RSU vesting schedule look, right? It doesn't matter the questions, but just think about the things you want to know, right? And what you're going to do next is you're going to thank them and ask for time. So you're going to thank the company for the offer, thank the recruiter, and be excited. This is not a time, even if the offer is not what you want, you need to show excitement. Because again, you want them to show this is the role for you. We're on the same team. Let's just close this baby, right? So be excited, show your excitement for the offer, regardless of what it is. And what that might sound like is, Carol, thank you so much for going over the offer with me today. I'm so excited to start working with the team and adding value. What I'd love to do is take 2 or 3 days to kind of think about the offer, review it, make sure everything looks good. Or if I have any questions, come back to you. And I'd love to reconnect on Friday. How does that sound? Wait for Carol to respond, get that scheduled for Friday. They're going to have no problem with that at all, right? So then this is what you're going to do. During those 2 or 3 days, you're going to review the package and prepare your counter. So you're going to review the salary, the reload budget, the stock, the vacation, all of it, and determine if it fits your expectations, right? No offer is perfect, so be willing to be flexible on certain things. For example, maybe you get 3.5 weeks of vacation instead of 4, or, maybe you have to come into the office, 2 days a week, but you really only wanted to come in 1. Okay, that's okay. Things aren't going to be perfect, but just think about overall, get you to what your goal was. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to prepare your counteroffer. Always counter no matter what. Even if you got the number that you want, why in the heck would you not counteroffer for more? It's the dumbest thing ever when folks leave money on the table. And I hate to be blunt like that, but that's the truth. If you choose not to counter, you are leaving money on the table. But you also need to know that when you're going to go into the counteroffer situation, it needs to be within the normal pay range for the job, right? So you've looked at Glassdoor. So for example, if this normal job that you're applying for is $100,000 and you're asking for $300,000, okay, common sense is probably not going to work, right? But if you're asking for $130,000, $120,000, okay, we might be looking at something, right? That might be within the range. So think about those kind of things, right? And determine the parts of the package that you want to counteroffer, right? I would suggest that you prioritize the most important parts up front and then kind of go down from there. So salary obviously is going to be a big one, vacation, a reload budget, RSUs, that kind of stuff will be first. Other things like a clothing budget, if that's really important to you and it applies to the job, you're going for, sure, you could ask for that, but I would put that down the schedule. Or maybe it's a learning budget. You want to be able to take a certain amount of classes each year. Still important, but I would probably deprioritize that. So when it comes to your number, right, the salary number, here's what I've always done. I've always started about 10 to 20,000 more than the number I want to settle for. For example, let's say I've been offered $90,000 for an operations manager role, but I know the range goes all the way up to 120. My bottom number is 100, so I would go back to the company at 120, right? I know that's at the top of the range. They may not go for it, but I know it's still within the range. And then that gives me some room to negotiate down, right? Again, same thing goes for a reload budget. Start with a higher number. If they offer you 10, maybe ask for 20, and then you settle for 15. So don't ask for the exact number you want in that first counteroffer. It gives you no room to negotiate. You want to go higher, but you got to play it smart, right? You don't want to go way too far out there. It's got to be within that range. So you've got your number. You thought about what your counteroffer is going to be. So you've got your call schedule on the day of the call. First thing you're going to do, of course, each time you're going to start with thanks. You're going to repeat why you believe you're a good fit for the role, using all the information you learned about the company and the value you plan to provide. So you're going to share your counter confidently and then shut up. Don't say anything else. Say the offer and then stop talking. For me, that was a hard lesson to learn. And for a lot of people, it is too, because when we get nervous, we talk. So our tendency would be to say the offer and then maybe say something afterwards like, well, and if you can't do it, it's okay. And, I'll accept anything, right? We kind of get nervous. And what we used to call it growing up was verbal diarrhea. And it's not a good look in this situation. So don't do that. So say your offer and then listen to the recruiter. But no, it does not matter what they say. And chances are they're probably going to give the impression that it's not possible, that they don't pay that much, that it might not work, that it's going to be really hard. But at the end of the day, what it is they're just worried that they're going to have to sell this internally or that it's going to take extra work. That's all that they're worried about. So at the end of the day, that's their job. That's what they're there for. So don't worry about it. Say your offer, let them say their piece, and whatever they say, just say, hey, I appreciate whatever you can do in reviewing and getting back to me. And just know at the end of the day, you know your worth, right? So it doesn't matter. You know what you're worth. So I always like to say you can counter about 1 to 2 times. I would not do more than that. After that, it can start to look to the potential employer that you're maybe difficult, right? And that's not what you want. You don't want to start a relationship like that. But I would say definitely you can go 1 or 2, maybe 3 times. I would not negotiate back 4 times. I think that's too much. For me, I usually find the sweet spot is 2 times. So, and also know this, be willing to walk away. Don't get too focused on this one opportunity. I said at the beginning, right? It may seem like the perfect role for you, but there's another job out there if this one doesn't work out. So don't have all of your eggs in this basket and don't get too single-minded, right? That's really what your focus is here to do. So I'm confident that with these strategies, these tips, you're going to be able to negotiate an amazing offer. It's going to take some confidence. It's going to be a little uncomfortable, but you're going to be able to do it. And I know you can do it because I've done it. And I want to tell you a story of when I did it, how it worked, and kind of what led up to it. So the story is real. And when I look back at this moment, I got to tell you, I have such pride. There's those key moments in your life when you think back about, dang, man, I did something impressive. And for me, this was a big deal because, again, you may think I'm an expert at these things, but at the time I had very limited experience with negotiating a job offer. But, I've always kind of had this thought, if I don't know how to do something, instead of giving up or being scared to do it, I just try to learn. I believe that you can literally learn anything that you want about any topic in all of existence, but it just takes the time to figure out where to look and how to learn. So what I did is I rolled up the sleeve and started learning. I probably spent, I want to be conservative here, but probably 10 hours consuming all of the content expertise I could on the principles of negotiating a job offer. I watched YouTube videos. I asked advice from colleagues. I read any blog or website that I could get knowledge from. And, I felt pretty good going into that first call, right? Where she comes to offer me. So recruiter calls me, and I remember she shared with me that the hiring team loved me and that they wanted to bring me onto the team. She proceeded to share with me the offer, and she said the company wanted to offer me $120K and that they were also going to offer me, I believe it was a $2,500 reload budget. And I remember going into this call that I had already had determined my number, and I knew that the number needed to be 130. I knew I would not take 1 penny less than 130 to go on board. So you might be thinking, ooh, that's kind of a big gap between 120 and 130. So what did I do? I took all of the learnings I had and I listened to the offer. I thanked the recruiter and I asked to connect again in a couple of days, right? I wanted to review the offer. Fast forward to the end of the week, I connected with the recruiter again. I was nervous because I was going to be asking for a lot more, right? But I was prepared. Hopped on the phone, I thanked her, and I, again, proceeded to reiterate my experience, the value I can add, the situation of the company, what they needed. And here's how I said it. I basically said, hey, based on the experience and the value that I provide, I would feel more comfortable moving forward with the role at $140K per year. Then I stopped talking and I just waited for the recruiter to respond. And it probably felt like she waited 10 minutes. Of course it wasn't. It was probably 5 seconds at max. And you could tell she had some concern in her voice. And she said, Austin, that's higher than the range. We really don't bring people in at that high of a number. And I was like, okay. I just listened and I responded with, I hear you. And I would just really appreciate you seeing what you can do. Again, in the back of my mind, I'm knowing that I don't need 140. I'm going to be fine at 130, but I got to start a little bit higher, give myself some room. So a few days later, we have another call and the recruiter, excitingly was able to share that she was able to get the offer up a little bit. So she got it up to 125. And this was a great sign to me, but I knew, I needed to get up another 5. And I was not going to be taking a penny less than the number I thought I was worth. So this time I said, given everything you've told me, I'd feel more comfortable at 130. Again, thanked her, stopped talking. We ended the conversation. No big deal. A couple days later, we pick it back up. This time she says, okay, Austin, I went to bat for you. I did everything I could. And I'm really excited to say I was able to get you up to 128. So another $3,000. And I'm on the phone just thinking, oh my gosh, we're so close. And there's a part of me that wanted to accept that. If I'm being honest, part of me thought, just accept it. We're close, right? It's $2,000. But I thought to myself, I know what I'm worth. I know I am worth more than 128. I am worth exactly what I'm asking for. So I stood my ground. Again, I showed my value. I shared why I was worth it, why I think they should make an exception, you name it, right? The recruiter made it seem impossible on the phone, by the way, when I did that. She was like, Austin, they really aren't going to want to go any higher. I'm not confident that this is worth our time to keep going. And I said, I totally understand. But again, if you could just see what you could do for me, I'm confident I can add value to the organization. It had to have been 2 or 3 days later. Recruiter calls me back and she says, the company's ready to offer me 130K. Folks, when I heard that, I accepted that offer in less than 1 second flat. It was so quick. I don't even think she finished saying the words coming out of her mouth. I accepted. So not only had I get the 130, I was able to negotiate the reload budget up as well to, I think, 7,500. So, quite a bit more than what they offered me. And, this was a big, big day for me. And I remember sharing the news with my wife and my friends, and I felt on top of the world because, again, this is the guy who's a people pleaser, who doesn't like confrontation, who likes everybody to get along. And I came out of that conversation kind of feeling like a boss, for a lack of a better term, because I got paid what I felt I was worth. And, I tell you the story not to brag about a salary or put people into comparison mode, because that is not what this is about at all. But what it is, I wanted to show you real life numbers, a real life example of what happened to me, of putting all these strategies together and then me coming out the other side feeling really successful. So my hope is you got something from this today, guys. You got some value, you got some strategies, you got a little confidence going into these job offer negotiation situations. So my challenge to everybody this week is, I want you to go on Glassdoor. I want you to look up to see how much you are worth, right? How much are you being paid in comparison to what the market is paying? And if it's less, I want you to ask for a raise or think about going somewhere else. And then the other thing I want you to do is I want you to recommend this episode to one person this week who's going through a job offer negotiation or will be going through it at some time in the future. I'm confident that there's going to be value that folks can take from this and use it to get the money they deserve and work at a company that values them. So to wrap up, again, I want to say thank you so much for listening and ask of all of you guys, if you have found value in any of my episodes, I would love for you to review or rate it on Spotify, Apple, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Those kind of ratings and reviews actually really mean a lot for me. And it really helps more folks find the Introvert Leader podcast. So thank you so much for listening. Make it a great day. The Introvert Leader Podcast. Subscribe for new episodes every other Wednesday.